Warning: the following show features stunts performed by professionals or under the supervision of professionals. Accordingly, Outlaw and the producers must insist that no one attempt to recreate or reenact any stunt or activity performed on the show. What's up, cats and chicks? Outlaw Greaser here, and today we're talking about notable Greaser movies. And yes, notable. I put that in there so nobody can ask why The Outsiders and why Grease is not included, because at this point they're just poser movies, really. Anybody that quotes The Outsiders all day long, that's the only thing they know about Greasers, then they're not the real deal. If it's not something you feel on the inside, and it's not something that's who you are as an individual, then it's not Greaser, it's just a wannabe. And I don't even gotta say nothing about Grease. I mean, we don't sing and dance in the street like that all day long, so that's not notable either. So here's a list of Greaser movies that I put together. I'm gonna include the trailer to these movies in the description so y'all can watch them. Alright, now these movies are specifically Greaser movies. I'm gonna do a series on this. I'm gonna do rock and roll films, because there's lots of films about rock and roll stars that are awesome, nostalgic films like based in the 50s. You know, if you're just wanting to see the old cars, hear the music, you don't really care if it's a Soch, a Greaser, or a rock and roll star, or what it is, then there's a lot of other movies I can recommend as well. But these are specifically Greaser movies. Oh, I didn't mention Crybaby earlier. That's not in this list either because it's a musical and nobody wants to see that unless you're just like, no Greaser wants to see that. It's just a mockery of our lifestyle, our culture, pretty much everything about us. It's just mocking it. And, you know, making a big fucking game out of it. But we're gonna jump right into it. That's why y'all clicked on this video, so let's go. You younger cats better get a pen and paper and start jotting this stuff down, because you can learn a lot from these films. Number one on the list is Deuces Wild. Starts off with Dion and the Belmonts playing I Wonder Why. And you got a lot of cool cars. It's got a lot of nostalgia in it, but it's also gang related. Gives you a good general idea of like the way things worked in the big cities back then. This is a gang called the Deuces, of course, and they're going up against different gangs in their territory, specifically just one guy that got out of prison. He's kind of got a gang. I think it's the Vipers, and the Deuces and the Vipers are, I'm pretty sure it's the Vipers, man. I might not be saying it right, but I'm pretty sure it's the Deuces and the Vipers. And they're kind of like rivals, and they're both Greasers. It's got a lot of good actors in it. Hell, it's even got Johnny Knoxville in it. If y'all didn't catch that, yes, Johnny Knoxville is one of the Vipers. And cool stuff, you know, it's a real good Greaser movie. Style tips, definitely take in what you see from the style in those movies. That's how you're gonna figure out what you like and what fits best for you. Is look at what they wore back then, watch the movies, look up the people that were famous back then, you know, check them out, and look in the background, you know, look at what the normal citizens were wearing, and what they were listening to, how they acted, you know, their mentality, their attitude, all that. Just take that in. Deuces Wild's a good movie for that, and they're always getting into shenanigans and busting ass, and it's violent, it's cool, and it's the real deal. None of that singing and dancing in the street shit. Number two on the list is The Wonders. I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard of The Wonders. Probably most of y'all have seen The Wonders. It's kind of like Deuces Wild, but probably like a PG-13 version. There's not near as much blood and violence. And I mean, there's sex scenes. There's, I mean, not real sex. I mean, they're screwing, but I mean, you don't see nothing. And there's even like a little strip poker scene. But you get a good general idea, again, of the attitude and the mentality. This is more teenagers than grown folks that are in Deuces Wild. They got a little gang called the Wanderers, and there's all kind of different gangs. And this one's actually sort of based on a true story. You can look into that. The Wanderers was actually a real gang back in the day in Brooklyn. And so were the Baldies, and I think the Ducky Boys as well. Wongs, I don't think that was real. You know, so it's not completely true, but it's based on a true story. So that's a good one to check out. It was cool. A lot of goofing around, playing in the streets, you know, just doing shit that we do as guys, especially as youth, troubled, delinquent youth. Alright, number three. This one's gonna shock y'all. A lot of y'all might not have heard of this one. Southerner's gotta have his sweet tea. It's not the name of the movie. The movie's Roadracers. If you haven't seen that, you need to check it out. That is perfect. Roadracers really shows you the rebellious nature of a greaser. The love for rock and roll, the conflict of teenage youth trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life, constantly fighting the system, and it just seems like the whole world's coming down on you and you don't know what to do. That's what Roadracers is pretty much about. That will show you why they call us rebels. That movie right there is one of my favorites, man. Next to The Heavenly Kid, there's a cop that screws with this guy all the time, and his son screws with him too. And that family don't like this greaser kid for some reason, and so the kid gives him hell, and then the cop dad, takes up for him, and eventually the cat gets tired of the bullshit, and you see what happens. It's a badass movie. At the end, it's just so cool, man. It's so cool. You got Gene Vincent's song in the end of it, Race with the Devil. A lot of good music in that movie. A lot of good music. And I just watched a movie that was mentioned in that movie that was actually from the 50s. None of these movies I'm mentioning today are from the 50s. I'm going to do another video on that in the series, Alright, moving on to the next one. Lords of Flatbush. This one's got Henry Winkler in it, who was the Fonz. In this movie, he doesn't play the Fonz, but he is the Fonz. It's got Sylvester Stallone in it, the feller that played Rocky. And it's just about a bunch of teenage greasers. They got their gang called the Lords of Flatbush, and they're still in high school and everything. Girlfriends get pregnant. Just the regular life, pretty much. Hell, all my buddies' girls are getting pregnant now that we're out of high school, and people are getting married and settling down. It's just a movie on rebellious teenage youth, and it was made in the 70s, but based in the 50s. One thing I can say that I don't like about the movie is they didn't use original music. I mean, they didn't use 50s music. They made up some kind of music or made up songs for the movie. And the songs, kind of like the movie Grease, the songs do not really give you that 50s feel. Kind of like takes away from the nostalgia. But Henry Winkler and Sylvester Stallone play some really cool parts. And heck, anybody in the Deuces, all the cats that are members of Lords of Flatbush were really cool. And it's worth watching. It's kind of funny too, You get the general idea of the smart aleck. The smart ass coming out in the greaser, the wise guy. You get a good idea of what it is to be a wise guy in the Lords of Flatbush, because Sylvester Stallone definitely plays a wise guy. Here's an example. Him and his girl are in the jewelry store and they're trying to pick out a ring, and her friend's in there. And that's not going to be helpful, this cat's trying to save some money. And her friend's like, yeah, get the biggest diamond, get this and get that. He can afford it, don't worry about it. And he's like, hey, go play in the street. Stuff like that. Can you go outside and play in traffic or something? Just good, smart comebacks like that just people don't hear anymore nowadays. So, that's a good one. Oh, speaking of playing on the street, back then in the 50s was known for having kids playing baseball in the street. How that worked, I have no idea. To this day, I cannot imagine how many windows were busted with baseballs back then. Why they didn't just go in the field? Go find a field somewhere out in the woods? I don't know, but they played in the street a lot. And there's street baseball in the movie too, so that's cool. Next, this is one of my favorite movies. I gotta say this, and it's gonna shock you when you watch it, because it's weird, man. Like, it's not like the rest of the 50s movies. Or the greaser movie. The movie starts and you're thinking you're watching like a knockoff of James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause, because it's two cats doing a chickie race, as James Dean called it in that movie, where they're both taking their cars to the edge of the cliff as fast as they can, and whoever jumps out first is a chicken. Well, what happens in the movie is the cool cat, his arm gets stuck on like he's got like a, hold on now. Yeah, I think this was... See, now I'm getting the scenes confused. I'm getting Rebel Without a Cause mixed up with the Heavenly Kid, but I'm pretty sure it was a bracelet this cat had on, and it got stuck on the door handle. And for some reason, he couldn't get it off. He ends up rolling off the cliff. His car explodes. Obviously, the cat's dead. Wakes up in a place called Midtown. He don't know what's going on, obviously. He don't know he's dead. And then there's like a uptown, a downtown, and a midtown, which heaven, hell, and the Catholics believe in purgatory. I don't know if that's what it's trying to say, but it's just a cool movie because like it was made in the 80s. I'm gonna say, pretty sure, because of the way everything looked in it, the music in it and stuff. But what happens is he's got an assignment he's got to do before he can be sent to uptown. Because he just, he's a cat, man. He ain't thinking about nothing like that. He was a teenager, wild and crazy. You know how us greasers are. And so he had more stuff he had to do before he could get to uptown. And so they sent him into the 70s to look after this kid and kind of help this kid out because he's a square. And so that's where it gets really cool. You're getting the tips and advice from this cat in the movie as he's teaching this young cat how to be cool the way he was cool back in the 50s. And I mean, hey, take what you can from it because he's got some really cool stuff. I'm not going to spoil any of my tricks, but heck, I've taken a couple little pieces of advice from that movie. And he fixes up this old 1957 Chevy for the kid just with his hands, because he's dead. He can do all kind of stuff. And it's really cool, man. So check that one out. And then last but not least, by any means, this is just one of the movies that I haven't seen very much. I've seen it like once or twice. The Loveless. It's a badass movie. And it's not like any other ones though. It's more, I don't want to say neo-rockabilly, but it's more greasy. It's definitely more greasy than the other movies. Like, it's more exaggerated, to be honest. It's more of an exaggerated greaser movie. I mean, yeah, these are some hep cats. They look cool, and they got the style down pat, but they exaggerated a little bit. A little too antisocial, like, hell, not everybody is just an asshole. In that movie, all the cats are just assholes. And, I don't know, I'm not trying to talk shit about it at all. It's a cool movie. Like, don't get me wrong, action-packed, got some really good actors in it. I can't think of the dude's name because I'm not good with modern actors. But he had played in a lot of movies. Big Fish. He was like the author, the poet in that movie, Big Fish. If y'all ever seen that. That guy played the main guy in The Loveless, and he's a greaser. And, pretty cool movie. No singing and no musical shit like that, so it's a cool movie. Check it out. They play with switchblades and stuff. It just pretty much shows what greasers do when they're around other greasers, just hanging out, But it really is more of like a modern greaser film, I'd have to say. It's not supposed to be, but with my experience in the greaser community, and as a modern day greaser, I don't even like saying that because I'm a traditional greaser, obviously, but living in 2021, this is the stuff us cats do nowadays, more than what they did back then. I feel like. I don't know though. People back then just weren't assholes. Like, people weren't rude back then. People had manners. People were good people. And that's hard to find nowadays, so I could see this being more relevant for nowadays than it was back then. Because, I mean, even the greasers had class and had integrity. I mean, yeah, they were the rough bunch, and a lot of them were loners, but that don't mean they're just going to be a dickhead. And that's what this movie is. A bunch of dickheads in leather jackets. But they got some badass motorcycles, some cool cars, some cool hair, cool switchblades, cool jackets. So check it out if you haven't. And that's pretty much it, man, for this list. I've got other ones on here that are scratched off because I'm going to put that in another video. Like I said, I'm going to do the movies that are actually in the 50s, like filmed in the 50s. Here, I'll give you a little taste, like Rebel Without a Cause, or like the Wild One with Marlon Brando. That's going to be a whole nother video. And then there's going to be rock and roll movies where it's not specifically about the characters being greasers, like the idea of a greaser, what you would want to take tips and styles from and everything like that. I'm going to do a series of movies that are based on true stories, because there's a lot of 50s movies that are based on true stories. There's 50s movies that are based on true people, rock and roll stars. There's movies that are just about good timing, and it's not all about, being a greaser, like leather jackets and everything like that. It's just about the 50s, having a good time as a teenager, regardless of, what class you were. So, There's a bunch of 50s movies out there. So dig it, check it out. Let me know what you think. That's it for this video, y'all. I'm gonna add some clips in here and spice things up a little bit and make it a really cool video. So hope y'all enjoy. As always, stay greasy, keep it rockabilly, and GTFO.